Okay, in this video we're going to kind of continue through our Python adventures here, and we're going to talk about variables and what are variables, how do we use variables, and the different types we can have. So what is a variable? A variable is a representation of a value. We call them variables because variables have varying values. We've used variables in a lot of different means. We've used them in mathematics, so you see things like a plus 5 equals 7, solve for a, or you see x plus y equals 100, x is equal to 50, so what is y? We've used variables before. And in Python and in any programming languages, really, variables are extremely important. Okay, extremely important. Now, variables do not appear automatically in a program. Okay, we have to create them. Now, we have to decide how many variables we need and for what we're going to use them for. Okay, so let's create ourselves a new program. I'm going to go File, New File. I'm in idle here. And I'm going to create some variables. So I'm going to put a comment in here, and I'm just going to say variable rules. Okay. The first rule about a variable in Python is the name has to be composed of uppercase letters, lowercase letters, digits, and underscore. Those are it. Meaning I could have variable 1 equals 100. I could have variable 2 equals 200. Okay, those are valid names. Okay, they have letters and numbers. I could also do something like this: variable underscore 3 equals 300. Okay, these are valid variable names. Now, the other thing about variables is that they have to begin with a letter. Okay, so you cannot have a variable like 4 underscore variable. Okay, that is illegal. You can have variable underscore 4, right? Equals 400. Now, the other thing about Python is an underscore is seen as a letter, meaning I could create a variable called underscore variable 5 equals 500. Okay, so an underscore is legal before. The last thing, or at least one of the last things you got to remember, is that variables in Python are case sensitive. That means capital X equals 10 and lowercase x equals 20. Those are different variables. Okay, so uppercase versus lowercase. This is perfectly legal. Now, it's confusing as all get out, because when you say x equals 10, well, it's got to be uppercase x or a lowercase x. You just have to be careful. I would, personally, I would say that I would stick with a convention, meaning I would do something like put all my variables in uppercase or all my variables in lowercase. I wouldn't do mixtures just because it can get confusing. The last thing about variables is you cannot use any special functions or special keywords in Python. For example, the word and. When I type it, notice it turns orange. I know that that means it's a reserved word, or if, or else. Okay, continue is another one. You cannot use these special keywords. Now, to really confuse you is, you can use that same word and change the case. Python keywords are all lowercase, okay, all of them. And, as, else if, global, or, yield, they're all lowercase when we talk about reserved words. This is why I try, and I say I try to have my variables be all uppercase. That way, if I want to use something like continue, I can do that. I don't have to worry about using accidentally the reserved word. So it just depends, okay? Whatever you want to do, though, I would make sure you pick a convention and go with that, okay? Now, so far, my variables have been equal to integers. Now, integers is a data type, and how do I know it's an integer? Because it's a whole number, okay? An integer is a whole number. Now, your variables can also be floats, okay? So like 20.5. This is a float because it has a fractional part. Even if I would do like 20.0, that is a float because it has a fractional part. When I see that decimal, that immediately tells me float. Now, I can also have variables equal to strings. Okay, so in this case, y is equal to hello. Okay, that is a string, and that's perfectly legal. You can have them equal to strings. You can also have them equal to Boolean values. Okay, true and false are Boolean values. We'll talk more about those later, but for now, just understand that my variables can be set equal to multiple different things. Okay, now a variable is extremely important because we can put anything inside of these variables. Okay, it can vary as often as you want it to, as often as you need it to. It can be a float for a moment, and then it can be an integer later. You can manipulate it and change it all you want. Okay, now what we're doing in here, though, as you can see, is we are assigning this variable name this particular value. Okay, we use a simple single equal sign for assignment. Okay, this is different because later we'll talk about comparison and we do something a little bit different. So a single equal sign says set this variable name equal to this value. Now, what I can then do is I can print those values. So earlier we talked about using print. I can say print variable 1. Okay? I could say print variable 2. Okay? And what this is going to do is it's going to print the value of that variable. Okay? Now you notice I didn't put quotes around it because I'm working with a variable name, not a string. So like down here I can print x, or I can print, oops, capital X. I can print lowercase x. Okay? This allows me to print those values. Okay? I could also do something like this. I could say print variable 3, comma, variable underscore 4, comma, variable 5. So I can print multiple variables, separating each one of those by commas. And then I can use end and set as well if I want to. Okay, that way I can have everything on one line. I can use sep and put separators in. So there's a lot of different things I can do with variables. Okay, so if I run this, I'm going to run the module, and I'm going to have to save the code. So I'm going to call this, just to keep in the spirit, I'm going to call mine video 2. I'm going to put this in my Python folder here. And when I run it, notice what it did, right? It prints 100, prints 200. There it printed the 3 variable values. There's the print of x and the other print of x. Okay, so it printed the value of those different variables that I had in there. Okay, it makes it nice. Okay. Now, the other thing that we can do with variables is we can do arithmetic with them. Okay, and this is where it gets to be a little interesting when you start talking about operators and how operators work on data. Okay, So I'm going to delete all this out of here because I want to create some new stuff here. Okay? Because I want you to see how some things work. All right? So what we're going to do is we're going to create ourselves some variables. So we're going to do a equals 10, a equals 10, b equals 20, and we'll do c equals 30. D is going to be equal to 2. All right? So we're just going to set up some very simple variables here. All of those are legal names, right? They all are letters. And we're going to do some things with this. So what we're going to do is we're going to talk about how to do mathematical equations or do arithmetic with Python. Okay. Now, with Python, there are some operators that we need to be aware of. Okay. Things like a plus sign. Okay, that's for addition. The minus, right? That's for subtraction. Okay, let me get rid of this here. We can also do an asterisk. That's for multiplication. We have two types of division that we can do. Okay, this is the division that we typically see, and then this is integer division. Okay, integer division basically says we're going to always return an integer or a whole number when we do division. We can do a double asterisk. This is for exponents. So when you're talking like something like 2 to the power of 4, right? These double asterisks allow me to do that. And the last thing that we get is the modulus. Okay, this is basically the remainder after division. Okay, so if we did something like 10 divided by 2, or we did, 10 modulo 2, that would be equal to 0. Whereas 9 modulus of 2 would be equal to 1. Okay, and we'll look at these when we go through. But these are the different arithmetic operations that we can do. Okay, so let's look at some examples. So we're going to print a plus b. Okay, so if we do a plus b, that should return the value of 30, right, when we print that. Just simple math. If we did print b minus a, and yes, I know I need to change this, thank you. Got to make sure I have the right variable names. B minus a, that should be equal to 10 if my memory serves me correct, right? So here's your addition and subtraction. We can print a times b. That would give us 200. We can print a divide. Let's do it this way. B divided by a. If we do that, it's going to give us 2. If we print b, this actually will give us 2.0. Division always gives us a float. Integer division, in this case, would be just 2. All right? So as we look at these, that's the key here, is that the different arithmetic operations do different things. We do a print a to the d, right? So basically we're saying a squared, that should give us 100, okay, when we go through and do the arithmetic. All right? So if we look at that, and then the last one, we'll print c modulus a, and that should give us let's see, that'd be 2. I have to go through and do that. We'll run it and find out. Okay, my math's not clicking real quick. So I'm going to run this. So I'm going to go up to run and run it, and it's going to tell me to save it. So I'm going to go ahead and save it. And you can see there I get a remainder of 0, right? So I got 30, 10, hopefully all that worked right. We have 30, 10, 200, 2, 2, and 100, right? It's everything we expected. Okay? So we can do basic arithmetic with our operators here, right? So we can do all kinds of stuff. Now, what gets to be interesting, okay? What gets to be interesting is what happens when we have multiples in there. For example, if I print A plus B times D, okay? Is that different than if I do A plus B times D? Okay, are those different? Well, the answer is yes, they are different. We have to think about order of operations, okay? Order of operations, we're typically taught that we first do exponents, and then we do, first we do parentheses, right? And then we do exponents, then we do division and multiplication, okay? Because technically division and multiplication are the same. So we do multiplication, and then lastly we do addition and subtraction. Okay? These are our order of operations. We always do the parentheses first, then we do then we do exponents, then we do multiplication and division, then we do addition and subtraction. So in this case, this first result, what should the result be? Well, it's going to do multiplication first, right? So it's going to say B times D, so we take 20 times 2, which is 40, plus A, that should give us 50. Which is different than if we do it this way. This one says take A plus B, so that'd be 10 plus 20, that's 30, times 2, that should give us 60, right? If we do the math correct. So let's run this and find out. So I'll run it. And that's what I get, 50 and 60, okay? We have to be careful. Like I said, you know, order of operations can really trip people up. I've seen this happen, okay? So be very careful when doing this, okay? It's okay when we do things like this. You know, if we print A plus B minus C minus D, right? In this case, since addition and subtraction are being used, it just goes left to right. It's the same as if we do like A plus B plus C plus D. Everything just works left to right. It's the same as if we do something like this. A times B times C divided by D, right? Order of operations, it just goes left to right, okay? The issue that comes up, okay, and we can run these and you can see how those go. The issue comes up in Python where we have exponentiation, okay? When we do exponents, meaning if we do something like this, print 2, 3, 4, okay? You would think that it would be 2 to the third, which is 2 times 2 times 2, so that's 8, and then 8 to the fourth. You would think that is how it would end up, right? So 8 to the fourth to figure it out. Well, that's not how Python works. With Python, when you deal with exponents similar to what we got here, it is a right to left, kind of. Basically what happens is this one evaluates correctly as 3 to the 4th first, and then it takes that result and takes 2 to that power. Okay? So essentially it takes 3 to the 4th and then takes 2 to that. Okay? So you have to be very careful when working with exponentiation, and remember that that works from right to left. It's different than other ones, okay? And that's where you got to really look at it. You know, when you deal with your order of operations, you know, it's pretty clear when you put parentheses in. But when you leave your parentheses out, remember that your order of operations, basically division and multiplication, are prioritized the same, which means you go left to right. Addition and subtraction are prioritized the same, so you go left to right. It's when you get into going with different ones, so you do division and addition or multiplication and division, you have to remember order of operations. The safe thing to do is work within parentheses. If you know what you want to do, work with inside those parentheses. It'll make your life a lot simpler. Okay? So we're going to stop there talking about variables and operators. Feel free to go through some examples and check these out, because it can be very interesting when you start getting into that. Okay? All right. If you have questions, as always, feel free to contact me. If you have nothing at this time, I'm going to bid you good morning, good afternoon, good evening.